Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of GodSaw's Turnbuckle, the wrestling video podcast. I run over here on youtube.com/GodSaw, and wow, it has been a interesting week, or at least weekend in the terms of, just in the terms of news that have been coming out throughout the entire week. So first of all, WWE has been releasing people, which is of course going to bring up people continually going for or coming into AEW on that one. So starting off throughout the week, they did officially announce the release of Hideo Itami. He had asked for his release quite a bit of time ago. I think he had his last match on 205 Live over Royal Rumble weekend. They did officially announce the release of Hideo Itami, aka Kenta. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. I don't necessarily imagine him going just straight to AEW. He may go back to Japan to continue on everything and be Kenta over there, or he may just decide to retire. I'm not sure how old he is off the top of my head, so it could be an area where he could consider retirement. Oh, I don't know, but I wouldn't know at this time. Also, throughout this week, it was announced by Ty Dillinger that he had asked for his release. It was granted later that week, and it was officially announced. He ended up being released. Not really much to say about that. He wasn't being used a lot, so in all fairness to him, he's banking on him instead of just kind of sitting at home and wanting to collect a paycheck. He's kind of banking on himself to be able to do something maybe in the independent scene. And of course, there's always been talk about him. There is now talk about him going to AEW. Again, I bring this up from when I talked about AEW a couple weeks ago. I would, in certain cases for them, I would just avoid always signing any WWE releases coming up here very soon, unless of course they feel like they can actually get something out of them with good potential, and they don't necessarily just like, oh, they're a WWE name and shoot them to the moon. There's definitely something for Ty Dillinger there. It's just gonna be an area of what that is going to be and what his ceiling really is to go along with that. So that's not the only release that happened. Now, both of those were releases that the talent actually asked for. This release was not necessarily asked for, and that was TJP. TJ Perkins got released this week, and it was not one of those where he had asked for his release. It could be just an area that is like, hey, your contract's up. We're not necessarily going to continue with you or anything with that. It's just one of those things. It was interesting because we haven't seen a release recently without either the talent asking for it or them doing something so egregiously bad that they got fired. This is just one of those, like, and you're done type moments. And that was probably the most interesting one. I mean, it's obviously not a huge talent name or anything to go along with it, but it is interesting that maybe WWE is considering releasing talents kind of like how they used to do it. So, if you remember years ago, that WWE would release talents usually right after WrestleMania. There'd be like a big purge of talent releases during that time frame. Anywhere from the upwards of 8 to 15 wrestlers would be released from their contracts during that time, which always sucks because you don't want people losing their jobs or anything on that one. Obviously, they weren't doing too much with TJP even on 205 Live. I know he was doing matches and having decent matches over there, but they weren't doing much with him. So they ended up cutting ties with TJP. It's an interesting thing to see WWE during this time where they've been bringing in all the talents and bringing in everybody and not releasing anyone without them like asking for it and then getting granted. So that's the interesting thing, is that we're seeing WWE do something like this again, and will we be seeing more of this coming up here very soon? And yeah, it's just going to be a thing to watch out for, that WWE is beginning to release talent again, and have them go back out to the independent scene, because maybe they're just not doing anything with them. Maybe we're going to be seeing a massive influx of 205 Live, or not 205 Live, but NXT stars either going to a main roster or 205 Live or anything on that one, which we'll talk about in this episode as well, because, well, Raw and SmackDown were a little bit interesting this week, to say the least. But that is not all the releases that happened. So this one was more of a backstage, but apparently Arn Anderson is no longer with the WWE, and that itself is a actually pretty big one, as it is, because Arn Anderson has pretty much been with the company in some kind of backstage role and doing some on-air stuff every now and again, since the days that WWE bought WCW back in 2001. He's been there that long, and now apparently he is gone from the company. Another area where either it hasn't fully come out whether he was released by WWE or if he left because he wanted to go do other things. That one has not fully gone out there, but apparently he is gone, which is also going to bring up to our rumor and innuendo. See what I did there? For people who, and obviously people who know that phrase, they probably listen to the Bruce Prichard Something to Wrestle With podcast with him and Comrade Thompson on a weekly basis. So yesterday, I'm filming this on Sunday morning. So yesterday, on Saturday, a lot of the wrestling news sites, or dirt sheets, whatever you want to call them, Meltzer even put it out there, apparently, sorry, I'm kind of pausing way too long there. So apparently, Bruce Prichard has been brought back to the WWE in a creative role. Now, that is a very... That's intriguing. That's an intriguing one, because it's also one of those roles where, you know, for the longest period of time, from at least, I believe, 1992 to 2008, technically, Bruce Prichard was a right-hand man of Vince McMahon and the creative team during that time frame. So he was through some good and bad and all the in-betweens to go along with it. He's had more than one stint. He had two stints. Obviously, he was Brother Love initially. I believe it lasted only for so long, I think till like 91, and then he got brought back in 92 after, I forget which pay-per-view. I know they have a podcast about him coming back and everything to go along with it. So I forget which pay-per-view it was in 92. And then he stayed with the company until 2008, where there was a little issue where he had brought a firearm or a gun to the arena. He had it, and apparently, based off of how he had it in like a lockbox, and it was at security. But there was an issue because apparently I think it was a rumor and innuendo thing, that apparently he made a threat to somebody to go along with it, and he ended up getting fired during that time frame on that one. So that was always an interesting story. You would have to listen to the podcast or listen to other stories about that to fully get it, because off the top of my head, I don't necessarily remember it on that one. So it's one of one of those things you got to kind of go back out and listen to. Don't fully just take it off of what I said. That's kind of why we're saying a room, and I'm going to continually using their term because I'm talking about the podcast area as well. Rumor and innuendo about the areas of him making a threat with it or anything with that. He does admit to bringing the gun to an area or having it in his car because of a hurricane that was going on in his hometown during that time. So he brought it, but he had it like apparently he had in a lockbox, and he gave it to security. He's like, hey, this is this, and this. We just want to keep it safe, and we don't want it around anybody or anything to go along with it. And apparently there was other threats that were quote unquote made. Again, rumor and innuendo. And he ended up getting fired during that time. So now apparently he's back in the WWE in a creative role, which, if you've remembered, he has been doing the Something to Wrestle With podcast since, I believe, 2016. He did do something with, of course, Impact Wrestling as well, back after he had gotten let go. And then also, back in 2016 as well, he was doing something that also promoted his Something to Wrestle With podcast. And of course, he also did do the network version of the podcast, which was Something Else to Wrestle with both of them. And that had gone for a season. There's been a rumor that a second season of that was coming up, which could be even more true, I guess, since he's now apparently back in the creative role that he was in before, which was also close to being working with Vince. Now this could be interesting on a side that maybe Bruce is going to be there in kind of the way, or kind of there in that way. And maybe Vince is not going to be at many of the shows. There's always been rumor that he's not at many of these shows. Now, and then when things do, or when he does show up, things get changed really quickly. Things get rewritten throughout the entire day, everything to go along with that. And maybe this is an area for that there to be more stability backstage. I don't necessarily know what's going to go through with this, or is this one of those little last snippets for Vince to? I won't even say for Vince to keep full power on that, because you kind of sense that there's becoming more of a sense that people kind of want Vince to back off and not necessarily fully go away, but you kind of get it. That there's probably a lot more talk nowadays about him retiring than before. And I don't necessarily know where this is fully going, or how this is going to end out fully working. It also kind of goes with what's going to happen with the podcast as well, because that podcast with him and Comrade was always talking about more backstage, more like not this more dirt, not always like just dirt or anything, just the inner workings of the backstage, going into shows and everything, and like getting their thought processes on what ended up happening with many of the different shows on that side. So it's again, I come back to that word, interesting. It's just maybe it's not necessarily interesting, it's just weird that they would bring back Bruce Prichard into a creative role. And again, like I said, it does go to light what's going to happen to the podcast. Does it end, or do they continue on with it? And it's one of those that you can see them saying like, yeah, it's okay, because it's a lot of older stuff that they're talking about. They're not talking about the new or anything go along with that. Some people think that maybe the podcast is going to end because of Comrade Thompson's involvement not necessarily directly with AEW, but the fact that he's, hosting these events that coincide with AEW or with All In or anything, because Starcast has been out, of course, out there, and that's on the same weekend as AEW's Double or Nothing show out in Las Vegas, where they do have a lot of legends, which also brought up a bunch of other controversy this week with that as well. So it's one of those things that it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do with that podcast. Does it end? Or do they go through everything that they were originally going to do that it ends? Or does it end immediately? Or does it just keep going on throughout the entire time without any real changes to it on that end of it? So it's things to be watching about throughout the weeks and months to come. We'll know a little bit more, obviously, this week with that podcast. I imagine they're going to be doing at least one more, and they'll kind of talk about it there. They'll talk about it there on that end, and it's things, like I said, things to watch out for throughout the week. So, like I said, it was an interesting week, even to the point that I believe there was even more rumor about The Undertaker, or not necessarily a rumor, because it was announced that Undertaker was going to be showing up at Starcast. This also goes with Ric Flair being there, Sting being there, Bret Hart being there. Now Undertaker's there. These are 4 huge names. And apparently Vince was none too thrilled about the announcement of Undertaker being there, because he either feels like Starcast is conjunctioned with AEW, or there's something more to it on that one. I don't necessarily know, but it's things to really be thinking about and kind of getting it out there to just have us think, like, okay, what's going on? Obviously there's a real thing there's a real bit that is going on, but we don't fully know it yet. So, again, more things that we'll eventually get to see down the line. So, let's talk about Raw, SmackDown, and NXT this week. And, well, the factor that we had 4 guys that were pretty much all over WWE television throughout the entire week. And those 4 were Ricochet, Aleister Black, Johnny Gargano, and Tommaso Ciampa, because all 4 of them were on both Raw and SmackDown, but they were also all over NXT as well. On that end, and this brings up a thing here that was very what's the word I really want to go for here? A little bit disheartening to a certain degree, because these guys were brought up in throughout the entire week with no real fanfare to it. Now, granted, you don't necessarily need fanfare to come up from NXT or anything on that, and it was a little bit disheartening, because to a certain degree, they were like almost attempting to fully change the characters to their own way of what they wanted. And it was a little bit weird to watch both NXT Raw, to watch all of 3 of them, NXT, Raw, and SmackDown, and what you ended out seeing, and thus the differences that you ended out seeing between the characters. The only one that didn't really change throughout the entire show, through all the shows and everything, was probably Ricochet, because they signified his high flying, everything on that one. So I feel like they didn't really do much in the terms of changing them. The wording that they were using for Aleister Black on Monday Night Raw was the weirdest stuff. And then when you watch SmackDown, they went basically to his NXT stuff with that. So you had a little bit of change in the terms of his wording, but you didn't really have a change in the terms of his, not necessarily look, but in the terms of his character for in-ring work or anything. That was a interesting bit on Monday night with Aleister Black as well. So, and also the biggest changes were Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, who basically worked babyface and were DIY for both Raw and SmackDown. And that was interesting. That was definitely interesting. Because you got little snippets of them trying to do their stuff from NXT in there, where Johnny Gargano kind of just looks at Tommaso Ciampa's title or something like that. But for the most part, even in their matches, they didn't necessarily feel like they were in their NXT characters at all. It was felt like they went out there and had matches in their full babyface style for DIY. And you did get some little snippets in there, like you got Tommaso Ciampa doing the clap, doing his clap, and patting himself on the back, things like that. You got certain bits like that, but it was pretty much them just doing DIY. That was a little bit disheartening on that one. Because it just, maybe it's because we've been able to watch what they've been building over the last year and a half with Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano, and this slow turn of Johnny Gargano kind of becoming a pseudo heel, but not being fully heel. But he's also gone to a darker place, and going back to Johnny Wrestling and then trying to come back to Johnny Wrestling and everything on that bit. It's just, it was really weird. We'll just leave it at that. But to be fair about it, Raw and SmackDown weren't that bad, and the matches that they did have were good. It was just like everything felt out of character on both Raw and SmackDown. So basically for Raw and SmackDown, they started off with Triple H being in the ring. He talked about Elimination Chamber, and then he hypes up the NXT debuting of Ricochet, Aleister Black, and Johnny Gargano, and Tommaso Ciampa, where you can even see it's like he was a little bit sad about this. And apparently there was a rumor that out there that he was not even really told about the call-ups, or that they would be on both Raw and SmackDown until like it happened. Until it happened at that time. So there's rumor that both Triple H and Vince are at odds about this, everything that go along with that. Not much really to that segment. He kind of goes through the show. He then announces that Baron Corbin and Braun Strowman were going to have a tables match, which was not a bad match. But where was Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley? Didn't they just help him beat Braun the night before? And they were nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found in this match. They didn't help him at all. Baron Corbin kind of works over the ribcage area, but eventually does get put through the table. Again, it was a fun match, but it was very weird with the stories that they were going with. And the aspect that you just had Baron Corbin get help from Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre the night before, and now they're nowhere to be found. Heyman comes out, and they're trying to do this thing where everything kind of flows together. Heyman does come out as Strowman's leaving. Strowman kind of grabs him with a pressure point hold, and Paul, gets hurt with that one. He has a little bit of trouble talking, so they cut to commercial. When he comes back, they have a video package or basically he was going to speak, and he started speaking, and it's like, you know what, don't worry about this. I've actually had this video made at great expense to me. That's a good one. The factor that people always come out is like, show the video footage, and they don't really explain it. Paul kind of explains it. It's like, you know what, at great expense to me, I've made this video documentary of Brock Lesnar. I like that little bit. After they showed part 1 of it, which they showed part 2 later in the night, which basically went over everything, Finn Balor comes out. Finn Balor kind of does a little thing with Paul Heyman as well. He ends up cutting a promo on winning the IC title, which at this point in time, or even after the even after that, you could kind of tell that this crowd wasn't really into it. Now, granted, for the NXT call-ups, I don't blame them. I don't blame them. They were brought up with zero fanfare and with little notice as well. And I believe they were in Lafayette, Louisiana. Yeah, Lafayette. And to be 100% fair with that, it's like, how many people over there may not watch NXT? Because a lot of the NXT guys ended up not getting much of a reaction on Raw. They got more of a reaction on SmackDown when they were over in New Orleans. And closer to there, where people kind of might be watching the NXT a little bit more. But people that were over here in Lafayette were not necessarily reacting, not only to the NXT call-ups, where they weren't doing much of a reaction to it, but they weren't reacting too much at all throughout the night. You got some reactions here and there, and it was one of those shows that, you know what, I don't blame the crowd for not reacting to much of anything. I don't. I know there was a lot of people out there that was kind of lambasting the town for not reacting to the NXT call-ups, or it's like, hey, this isn't necessarily too bad or anything, but was there really anything to react to? Like, Raw wasn't bad, but you had a lot of time devoted to the NXT guys that they might not have known about on the show, and they had good matches, very good matches on the show, but again, there wasn't much, like, it didn't feel like the crowd was excited into it, and you saw it throughout the entire show. So that's pretty much all I'm really going to talk about, because I don't blame the town for necessarily not reacting to it, because they had a lot of time, again, spent to people that they might not necessarily know about all that much, or the other stuff wasn't necessarily all that great to begin with. On that portion of the show, there were some other good portions that, like I said, there was reactions to certain bits, and like Sasha and Bayley coming out, they did get a bit of reaction over cutting a promo for their women's tag title win from the night before. They made an interesting little snippet in there about them wanting to defend the titles not only on Raw and SmackDown, but NXT as well. So they are making mention to potentially defending it on all brands, which I think is a good thing. I think that's a good thing. It will be that's truthfully intriguing right there. That is a truthfully intriguing thing that they threw out there. That Sasha and Bayley will be defending the tag team titles, or whomever has those women's tag team titles could potentially either defend it on Raw or SmackDown or NXT. That's intriguing, because they can literally show up anywhere at any time. Nia and Tamina did come out and interrupt them, so it looks like that they will be the first ones to go after the tag team titles. They did try to go into the ring to attack Sasha and Bayley, but they got fended off, and they're kind of backed off. And honestly, if you take a look at the Elimination Chamber match, Nia and Tamina are actually a very good choice for for the first title defense, because out of all of the teams that were in the Elimination Chamber, the only team that got defeated without it being a definitive, like, one team beat that team was Nia and Tamina. Because after Nia Jax put herself into the pod, both Sasha, the team of Sasha and Bayley, and Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville took out Tamina, and all four of them pinned her to make sure that she was going to be gone. So it wasn't a full-on definitive defeat for them. And now this will probably be, and then this might be that definitive defeat or anything to go along with that. So it actually makes sense for them to be the first ones going after those tag team titles. So that one made sense. You had Finn Balor and Ricochet going up against Bobby Lashley and Lio Rush. This happened after Finn was cutting a promo on winning the IC title. Lio interrupted him and said that, Finn doesn't deserve to be the IC champion, Lashley does. So apparently they're back together, even though Lashley attacked Lio from the night before. Lashley attacks Finn, and they beat down Finn Balor. Ricochet makes the save. That led to the tag match, which was a very good match, but with Ricochet and Finn going over. By the end of the match, people were reacting a little bit more to Ricochet because he was able to do certain things about with his moveset and everything to kind of get the crowd excited. I mean, he is a high flyer, so he was able to excite the crowd with some of the things and more unique style of high flying that he does. You had a bit backstage with Drew McIntyre confronting Triple H, saying that he wants Seth Rollins. He wanted to prove that, he deserves to be in the Universal title scene. He wants Seth Rollins, and he wants him tonight. Dean Ambrose walks up and is like, you know what? I'm not doing anything tonight. How about we have a match? He slaps Drew McIntyre, and then Triple H looks at Drew, is like, so you want me to change that match? And Drew's like, yeah. Yeah. Which led to them having a match later in the night, which ended out being all of 2 minutes, which was almost a squash. Drew, there was a bit of a back and forth between them, but Drew just hits a Claymore kick and then hits a second one afterward and gets the pin. It was a really quick match. After another video package for Brock Lesnar, the second part, Rollins was backstage. He gave an interview basically talking about what he was going to have to do to go and beat Brock Lesnar. And then they threw a little comedy spot in there. Basically a little comedy spot in there. All of a sudden, you just see on the camera Dean show up. And he goes like, where were you at? Seth just looks at him with the most perplexed look on his face that he could muster up at that time. It's like, have you lost your mind? Because both of them just staring after what they had just done with each other, and now Dean just expects them to go out there and help him. And he asks him, like, have you lost your mind? Dean's just like, and walks off. It made me laugh, that one, but obviously Dean's in the mode of whatever. You also had a little thing with Heavy Machinery. They come out, they did an interview throughout on the show. They're only going by their first names now. I like the whole aspect of they're trying to get this across that that Otis kind of watches Tucker Knight's back through the in-ring while Tucker ends out watching out for Otis throughout the throughout everything else. So they're kind of getting a camaraderie thing about them. They get interrupted by Lacey Evans, who does the same thing that she did the night before, which was just walk down the ring and then walk back up without doing anything. And then apparently she gives like this interesting look to Heavy Machinery, who they end up doing a strut down the ring. And then they strut back up the ring doing the bushwhacker walk. And then apparently Lacey just cracks up. So she either broke character there for a bit, or I guess it's supposed to be a little thing that she was impressed by this. I don't know, but that was an interesting one. You had a backstage segment with Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano. They were getting ready to have their match. Chad Gable and Bobby Roode approached them, talking about, it's like, why are you getting a shot at the Revival? We should be getting that shot at the Revival. The Revival do come in. I like how the Revival come in. It's like top guys coming in. Make way, make way. Top guys coming in. I do like things like this. And I do like the Revival on that one. This does set up for the match with the Revival and Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano. Again, a good match. Another really good match. And there's no way that these two teams would go out there and not have a good match. It was, again, one of those bits that just really they just threw it out there. And like I said, Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa from before, they pretty much worked straight face DIY throughout the entire match. And yeah, it was a little weird. You also had Finn Balor and Ricochet do an interview. Finn leaves it to Ricochet, which he talks about having the match on Raw and everything on that one. Again, not much to it. And things that we talked about earlier as well, that the crowd not fully reacting to it. You had a Kevin Owens update again. This time he was at the movies, and apparently his son got popcorn. He was given a 20, which he was kind of these little bits I like as well, because he did a bit from the night before where he was taking a pizza home after rehabbing and everything. And this time it was at the movies. First of all, I'm going to agree with Kevin Owens on this one. I'm going to agree with him about pizza on this one. I am a big fan of pineapple, but I am not a big fan of pineapple on my pizza. So I agree with Kevin Owens on that one. But that's just me. I know some other people do. With that, this time at the movies, he was with his son. He comes up with a popcorn and a pop. I know he calls it a soda. I still call it pop. That's the Ohioan in me. Thank you. And he says, like, where's the change? Like, his son was like, no change. No change. It was like, I gave you a 20. This is all you got. There's got to be. And it's just, I just love these little bits. I do. I feel like they're going to be bringing him back as a face. You do also have an Elias segment in the ring where he basically is fed up with everything. And that's he's doing his normal shtick, which is actually getting a little bit more of a reaction from that crowd than almost anything else on the night. But even like Elias doing his shtick didn't even get heavy boos, which it usually does, or heavy cheers with it. But this eventually brings out Aleister Black, and he said he was going to make him fade to black, which he ended up doing in the match, which was a good match again between Aleister Black and Elias. The show ended with Ruby Riott going up against Ronda Rousey for the Raw Women's Championship, so they're keeping that on as normal. Whenever Ronda has a match on a pay-per-view, she comes out and defends the title the next night. This was definitely a longer match. You had the Riot Squad getting involved in the match here and there to make it be a little bit more of a not one-sided match, because it was kind of sad what they did on Elimination Chamber with that one. Again, for that portion of the review, you could kind of go to my Elimination Chamber review as well to kind of sum it up. I felt like they could have not had that match, and they could have still done the Ronda, Charlotte, and Becky segment to go along with it. They didn't need the match to go along with that. But this match was a lot better, but also comes off a little bit weird that now Ruby was able to do more against Ronda Rousey than she was the night before. For SmackDown, Shane comes out to start the show. He says that, he liked what he saw on Raw so much with Gargano, Aleister Black, Tommaso Ciampa, and Ricochet, that he was going to bring all of them here to SmackDown. Miz interrupts. He says that he was sorry and that he used he used Shane McMahon to garner more respect from his dad, and they wanted the rematch. They wanted a rematch. He wanted to try to get a rematch with the for the SmackDown Tag Team titles with Shane. And of course, I like the aspect that he brings up is like, I know there's no automatic rematch clause or anything on that one, but we want the rematch. The Usos eventually come out. They do call out the Miz, and they call out Shane. They call out Miz as being a joke for a tag team partner, and saying that Shane should find a different tag team partner. This gets Shane all up in arms, and he decides, is like, you know what? A rematch is in order, and we are going to have that rematch. It's going to happen at Fastlane. Up next, you had Aleister Black going up against Andrade. This was a good match. Again, like, how could they have a bad match? I mean, we saw the match that they had over on NXT over at NXT for the NXT Championship. It was really good. It was very enjoyable. And they did that here as well. A little bit weird on that side because Zelina Vega, who is the manager for Andrade on TV, is also really married to Aleister Black. So that was a little bit weird to watch her root on Andrade while Aleister Black was in the ring, but, you know, they're in character. Whatever. Right? So you again had Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa backstage. They were doing an interview. This is full face mode for both of them. They were just like, somebody just told them, like, just do DIY. Just do it. Even though Tommaso Ciampa is probably the best heel that they have going for them, he had to go full babyface. The bar interrupts. They kind of mock them a little bit, and they do mock them a bit, and that sets up for the match between Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano to go up against the Bar. Before that happened, you had a backstage segment with AJ Styles and Jeff Hardy, where they were kind of says like, okay, Sunday was Sunday, tonight we're a team, type of thing. And then Kofi comes in, instead of extending the olive branch, he extended the pancake branch, which they were like, okay, and kind of signifying that they were going to be a team for the night. You had the Bar going up against Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano. Gargano and Ciampa pick up the victory after what was a good match, and oh my god, Tommaso Ciampa almost destroyed his left knee on the sunset flip powerbomb. So when he did the sunset flip powerbomb, Sheamus landed right on his knee, and it's amazing that he did not destroy it in there. Again, really good match. Tommaso Ciampa picks up the victory, rolling up Cesaro, and I thought it again was a really good match, but it just it was a little weird having them up there. It was a little weird having them up there, especially in that light. Asuka comes out. She does an interview, and they talk about how Charlotte and Becky and Ronda get all of the attention at this point. At least Asuka brings up that she beat both of them at TLC. She made Becky Lynch tap out at Royal Rumble. She wants a new challenge. This brings out Mandy Rose to cut a promo on Asuka and challenge her, which did lead to a match between Mandy Rose and Asuka. Lacey Evans did a bit where she came out. Sonya Deville stops her from fully coming out there by standing up at the entrance ramp. Lacey Evans ends out leaving. There is a big rumor that Lacey Evans is going to be Asuka's opponent for WrestleMania, and that would be I won't say a weird matchup, but it would be an intriguing one to see how well Lacey would do with the likes of Asuka in there, in the terms of having a decent match. This match itself with her and Mandy Rose, because that was a slight distraction like right at the beginning, was actually a pretty decent match. Towards the end, after a spinning back fist, Rose, or not spinning back fist, but a knee that would have been to the face, Rose feigns an eye injury, throws, after she reveals that she feigned it, throws Asuka throat first into the ropes and gets a stack up roll up victory. So that's right, Mandy Rose beat Asuka. I would imagine she's going to do get a match at Fastlane with her, and that could be, again, what we saw here was actually pretty good. So that would actually not be a bad match for what they would have there. You had a Charlotte interview backstage. She basically talks about main eventing WrestleMania. She shows off the bruises from the crutch attack from Becky Lynch, and which looked like a nasty one. And not really much to the interview. That was pretty much all that they talked about there. They didn't even really talk about the birthday celebration for Ric Flair coming up on Monday with that one. So, which that's going to be a couple of segments. We'll talk about that in a little bit. They do have a couple of segments set up for Raw at this time. You had Ricochet going up against Eric Young, which again was a good match with Ricochet going over. Not really much to fully say about that one. Ricochet showing off all of his stuff again. You had a New Day interview backstage with them setting up for Kofi to look like he's going to get another shot at the WWE title. I love this one. And I loved this. I love this aspect because you don't see him do it that often because they were at the gorilla position and they had the microphone, and then right after that they went right into Big E doing the New Day shtick, and you saw him backstage doing it and getting all amped and everything for it. You do see a little bit of which you always hope they don't really go that way with it. But are they teasing this whole aspect of Kofi going after the WWE title to be a thing for the New Day to break up a bit? Because you do see like little snippets of Big E kind of staring down things, but you know, Big E's always doing different and weird things on the camera to kind of garner like almost a reaction. Like what was it, a couple weeks ago when they initially did the whole thing where they got rid of the general managers and everything, and they had the backstage bit on SmackDown. You just had Big E with like a big old chunk of like beef and just eating it and staring a hole at Daniel Bryan, like things like that. He's usually doing something like that. This led to the 6-man tag, which was Kofi Kingston, AJ Styles, and Jeff Hardy going up against Daniel Bryan and teaming up with Samoa Joe and Randy Orton. Again, this was a good match. Nothing really too much to go about this. The main story on this one was Kofi getting a lot of the heat throughout the match, but also making comebacks throughout the entire time. Eventually, Kofi picks up the pinfall on Daniel Bryan after doing a trust fall to the outside to take out Orton and Samoa Joe. He ran into the ring, and also after taking out Eric Rowan as well, with the New Day out there. Kofi hits the Trouble in Paradise on Daniel Bryan, picks up the victory for the team. Shane McMahon comes out and he names Kofi Kingston the challenger for the WWE title at Fastlane. So Kofi is going to get another title shot. Are they going to do the split up? And is it just Big E going heel if they do it, or is it both of them? Because you know how it ends out working with like how they've been doing it. Like Xavier always seems to hype up Kofi. Xavier comes off as that person's like, I'm okay with going for the tag titles. That's all I really need. I've got these other things. I got my buddies here. I've got my up, down, down thing. I'm okay with the tag belts. But he always hypes up Kofi to going after the main titles. Where that could, I guess, maybe lead to a little bit of dissension for Big E, because he doesn't hype up Big E to going after the main titles as well. I don't necessarily know. And there's also a piece of me that's like, you know, I wouldn't mind the New Day going after singles gold, but they don't have to split them up to do it. They don't have to. They could just all stay in the camaraderie size. Like, you know, you want to go after singles gold, that's fine. we support that. That's great. So hopefully that's what they decide to play off of. But generally, with storylines like this, it leads to some kind of team breakup, which could be that for the New Day at this point in time. So this leads us into NXT for this week, which aired on the 20th of February. They started off with Aleister Black going up against Roderick Strong, and oh man, the differences. Man, the differences from NXT to the main roster. This was a good match. Good match to start off the show. And I guess just kind of having those characters back in their light, in their same light from before. I liked with on SmackDown that they kind of went back to what Aleister Black was as a character. They talk because there's always been talk of like there was the initial bits of his character was like there's light and there's dark, and somewhere in between is Aleister Black. Somewhere in between there is Aleister Black. They brought that back in the on SmackDown, where they were using words as moody and other things, which was really, really weird on Raw. But they went back to like their traditional NXT stuff for SmackDown. Again, really good match. I enjoyed this match here. They were continuing on with this bit with the Undisputed Era and Ricochet and Aleister Black getting involved in this as well. He made a save for Ricochet at one point after Aleister Black wins the match with the Black Mass roundhouse kick over Roderick Strong. The Undisputed Era comes out. Kyle O'Reilly just ate a roundhouse kick, and then eventually they gain control over him with it being 4-on-1. Ricochet comes out, makes the save. They did chase them off, which will probably lead to some kind of either tag team or 8-man tag match or something. You had a backstage segment with Shayna Baszler, Marina Shafir, and Jessamine Duke doing some argument backstage with some of the trainees and other people backstage as well. This leads to a little bit more later. You have Bianca Belair cutting a promo on Io Shirai and Kairi Sane that she was none too thrilled about that 6-woman tag match from the week before, that she is not going to sit back and let them just get the title shot. She wants the next title shot, and she wants to be the next NXT Women's Champion. You have Mia Yim going up against Xia Li. I thought this was a pretty decent match with Mia Yim going over. Afterwards, you had Shayna Baszler, Marina Shafir, and Jessamine Duke come out and attack Mia Yim because she was standing up for the trainees backstage. Some of the trainees do come out to try to make the save, but everybody ends up getting beaten down. And the four horse, or these 3 of the 4 horsewomen stand tall with everybody left lying. You had a backstage segment with Johnny Gargano with Candice, him getting ready for his match with Velveteen Dream. Tommaso Ciampa comes in and offers his help, but Johnny Gargano says, "I won this on my own. I don't need you, and I've got what I need here, and I'm going back." And Johnny Wrestling is back, and that's what's going to end up happening. You had a short segment backstage with Matt Riddle. Or not backstage, but a short interview with Jeremy Borash with Matt Riddle, talking about how nothing was going to stop him, how he does things his way, even talking to the point of, it's better to ask for forgiveness in certain cases and be you, and leave and tone everything up, and then ask somebody to tone it down instead of playing it safe and toning it down, and somebody then asking you to tone it up a bit. So Matt Riddle being Matt Riddle, he's saying nothing's going to stop him. He's coming after any of the titles. And I think there's more of an interview on .com. I haven't fully watched it, but it was cool to see Jeremy Borash doing an interview on NXT with that one as well. Which led us to the main event of the night, which was Johnny Gargano going up against Velveteen Dream for the North American Championship. And this was a great match. Just an absolutely fantastic match. Not like just areas of both of them is like, one overly dominant over the other. There was a decent amount of back and forth between the two of them that that made you like wonder at any point in time who was going to pick up the victory. Johnny Gargano did throw a lot of super kicks in this match. That is fairness. But overall, it was a great match. I like the story that they told here. The end came with Johnny Gargano going for, I believe, for a top rope move, but he gets caught in the Dream Valley Driver, and Velveteen Dream rolls over, does it again, and does the Purple Rainmaker elbow drop finisher to pick up the victory and to pick up the North American title. Now, they did do a little bit on there that didn't air, that apparently Johnny Gargano attacked him and took the title back. Maybe that was their, like their little thing. So these were filmed long before that happened, so they did at least have the North American title with Gargano when he was on both Raw and SmackDown. But the imagery I liked on this one, the imagery I liked here was that they cut to an upstairs, like above the crowd type shot, and you just had Tommaso Ciampa looking on as Velveteen Dream was celebrating, and they of course cut back into the ring for him celebrating as well, and him just smiling. It's like he knows he has Johnny Gargano yet again, because Gargano wasn't able to do it on his own. And you know, again, the differences between Main and NXT. Maybe it's because I've been able to watch NXT this entire time, and I do truthfully enjoy those stories that they're building up. That just came off super weird with how they treated those four on Raw and SmackDown. Mostly Gargano and Ciampa, because they were pretty much babyface throughout the entire thing, where they weren't necessarily where Ciampa was just full heel and Gargano somewhere in between. Gargano kind of remained that in between throughout the entire thing, at least on Raw, but on SmackDown it was like just full babyface everything. It came off really weird. So for, I think, Raw this week, I didn't announce anything for SmackDown yet. They did announce that Mia Yim would be taking on Shayna Baszler next week. Not for the NXT Women's title, just in a match. But on Raw, they've announced the Ric Flair birthday celebration. They haven't announced the match yet. But the other thing that they have announced is that Roman Reigns is going to be on the show, giving an update on his condition and everything, and how he is recovering from the treatments and everything for his leukemia. So that's going to be an interesting little bit there. I think they're going to get a little of an announcement from him. I don't suspect him being in the ring so soon. But I guess you never necessarily know with what they're going to fully announce. But there's a lot of things going out there. Apparently, a trainer saying that he's getting himself ready for an in-ring return, but then elaborated a little bit more later, saying it's still months away. It's not like it's going to happen next week, type of thing. Because I think somebody tried to call it out that that WWE is trying to work everybody with Roman Reigns having this disease, which is still a thing. This is one of those bits that until shown otherwise, the WWE would be working somebody. It's like, I'm gonna kind of trust this one, because that's overboard if they were trying to work everybody that he had this disease or anything to go along with that. So somebody called that out, and then the trainer elaborated more. It's like, dude, this is gonna be months down the line. He's training to come back. He's not fully recovered or anything to come back or anything to go along with it. But that is going to happen on Raw. I don't know if that will start off the show or anything, but it'll be good to get an update directly from him on that one, because I think a lot of people says things changed. Things definitely changed. I think to a lot of WWE fans, it's not an area that the reason why they booed Roman was because they didn't care for the character, but they are more than wanting to support the man that plays Roman Reigns going through this. So things kind of changed when the announcement was made. I'm not going to talk too much about that. We went a little bit more in depth with that a long time ago, so it'll be interesting to see what his update will be on Raw. So with that being said, that's pretty much everything I've got for you guys this week. Like I said, a very intriguing, interesting week, especially with the factors that WWE is doing more releases now, and they're starting to do that yet again. And we'll see how everything starts panning out. Do we see more of those? We'll see if this thing with Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, Aleister Black, and Ricochet being on Raw and SmackDown and NXT continues, or if it was just a 1 week thing. Who knows where they're going to... It'll be interesting to see where they go off with everything. I expect something with Becky Lynch on Monday night for the Ric Flair celebration. At least that's how I feel it will probably end up going. And yeah, it could be an interesting show. Could be an interesting Raw and SmackDown. NXT is always enjoyable, at least to me. But we'll see how Raw and SmackDown also go throughout this week, and whatever news comes out this week as well, we'll go over next week to go along with that, as we will be back next week, of course, with Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. Any other news here on GodSaw's Turnbuckle. With that being said, peace out, take care, and we will see you guys again next week.